Before we start today, I have to tell you about State Farm agent Bryant. A lot of our listeners have gone to him for all their insurance needs, and he's been very helpful in getting them the coverage they deserve. There's no games with Bryant. He's just here to help and make sure you feel safe. So if you have insurance needs and you haven't called him yet, what are you waiting for? Dial up the number, 630-796-2662. That's 630-796-2662. Or visit him online at ryanismyagent.com. That's ryanismyagent.com. And make sure to mention Sports Talk Chicago. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. I want to start today with this. 1 week ago, on this program, we talked about the Chicago Cubs. They were hot. They were rolling. I even said maybe they are contenders. Maybe they could be a playoff team. Everybody else said, why not see a Cubs-White Sox World Series? Funny. I did say this one thing. Their kryptonite, their problem, would always be the starting rotation. The starting rotation is the Cubs' biggest problem. Said that last week. That will get in the way of any playoff appearance, any playoff hopes. Any success that they thought they could have will not happen when your pitchers give up 5 runs a game. Starting pitchers. Who knows what will happen in relief, too. So we waited and waited. We did say, let's see how things play out. Maybe these guys will improve. Maybe they'll get better. And now it's the end of June. Last week of June. At the beginning of the month, I said this would be a big month for the Cubs. Now, to their credit, still 39-31. They're a good team. But they've dropped some games recently. And when I look at the starting rotation, my mouth is aghast. I am so disgusted with what they've done with their top 5 pitchers. I would hope by this point, if you're a Cubs fan and you still want to buy into this team, you'll acknowledge the problem. We'll get to the offense in a second. A couple of guys aren't performing that we'll tell you about, but the big issue, the number one issue for this team still is starting pitching, starting rotation. 5 guys. They barely have one who's serviceable. That's their problem. Kyle Hendricks is the only one who's come on as of late. At least his ERA is at 4.13. ERA plus still below 100, so still a below average pitcher, but he's getting there. 9 wins. If wins matter to you. Adbert Alzolay on the DL, unfortunately. Was doing okay before he was injured. Everybody else really has to go. Gone. Goodbye. You know, I give Cubs hitters a lot of credit, actually. They're very patient with this rotation. They continue to stick up for it week in and week out, and they're giving up 5 runs a game. 6, 7, 8. Why not? I'm really surprised no one said anything. And if I were a hitter, and I continually had to be put under pressure to put up 5 or 6 runs a game, at some point I'd say, hey, can you help us out a bit? Can you stop giving up this many runs? Zach Davies has been an utter disappointment. Not that I'm surprised, but he's been worse than even I expected. I was hoping for a 3.54 ERA. I was hoping for something to be happy about. There's nothing I'm happy about with him. Trevor Williams is still hurt. When he played, he was nothing. And here's the kicker, Jake Arrieta. I remember the day he was signed. Everybody's so happy. Great player. He'll be 2015 Jake. The reason why he was bad in Philadelphia was because he wasn't in Chicago. Yep, that's the reason. Location, right? Environment. once he comes back to Wrigley, he'll just be a historic pitcher again and put up a 1.77 ERA. Sure. It's the worst ERA on the team. 5.14. Wait a minute. Come on. You didn't think a 35-year-old starting pitcher who's been around the block and can't pitch anymore wouldn't do well back in Chicago? Right. Everybody needs to start being more realistic in their expectations. There was a lot of hype when Arrieta returned. Shouldn't we have all expected, shouldn't we have all known this wouldn't work? Good friend of the program, George Hoffman, said the other day on Twitter, is it time to ditch Arrieta? Yes, he's right, it is. I've seen enough, haven't you? I mean, this is ridiculous. I would DFA him and get him out of here immediately. 75 ERA plus. 100 is league average. So for all of you who cry about sabermetrics and want to see the real scoop, that's the real scoop. ERA is not a good way to measure. Well, the real scoop is ERA plus, and that's at 75. So your argument's also foiled. Jack Arrieta, all around, if you want to count traditional or if you want to count sabermetric numbers, is not good. Might be a good guy. Might be loved by the fans for what he did before, but the fact is today, not performing. Zach Davies, not performing. Trevor Williams, when healthy, not performing. This starting rotation needs a massive upgrade if you want any idea of a playoff appearance. Why is this not being talked about enough? In case you didn't know, you could be a fan of a team and want better. You know that, right? You could demand better from your team and still be a fan. Why is no one demanding better from the Chicago Cubs? Why is everyone content with 5 pitchers with ERAs around 5? Or 5 pitchers with ERA pluses all under 100? That's right, even Alzolay is under 100. All of them are below average pitchers. And you're sitting here expecting a playoff appearance. Not going to happen. Not with that. This needs to get better. Immediately. It's late June. Trade deadline's coming in a month. Decisions have to be made here. And if you want your team, if you want the Cubs to be somewhat of a contender, guess what? This won't cut it. Something has to change soon. Now. So instead of denying it, instead of saying there is no problem, you should acknowledge it now and start speaking about it. This is a problem. This team isn't a vibe when 5 of your starting pitchers, all 5, are below average statistically. Sabermetrically, they are. That's not a lie. I'm not going to call anybody a vibe. They're not even average. Come on. Really? The hitting's done great. But that can't last. You can't depend on your offense every day to score you 6 or 7 runs. You're going to lose games. So if you're expecting that to continue in July, August, September, if they make the playoffs, it won't happen. Then you're really going to be disappointed. Fortunately, Rizzo's done well. Bryant has just been torrid in his pace, and everybody else has been fine. But I want to focus on 2 outfielders, 2 starters for the Cubs, Ian Happ and Jason Hayward. You know, it's funny, a couple of years ago when Happ was sent down to AAA, everybody said it was the wrong move by Joe Madden. They blamed Madden for sending Happ down to AAA. Now you look at Happ and you think, maybe he was onto something. I know Hap is a clubhouse guy, podcast, well-liked, had a good year last year to his credit. This is unacceptable. You're 26 years old, you're hitting a .184 in Major League Baseball, and your OPS plus is 81. Needs to change. Something has to give. And I don't know if that means taking him out of the lineup, sending him down again. Something needs to change here. Because you can't be expecting and accepting these numbers. That's a fact. And Jason Hayward, you can't send him anywhere. That's the unfortunate part. But this is just way too much. Overblown. The mediocrity I'm seeing. I mean, this is just, it's unbearable to watch. 54 OPS plus. 54. A .168 average. And we all agree now that that signing maybe wasn't the best move for this team. Long term. They did win the World Series, I'll give them that, but the long-term after effects of that signing, they're still feeling today. It's been 5 years since they won it all. I'm not too thrilled about that. You shouldn't be either. You shouldn't accept that. I mean, his performance has just been atrocious. The only thing that's saving him is his defense, fortunately. That's why his WAR is .1. Last year he did great, Hayward, in limited time. But Hayward's never even been really an average hitter for the Cubs. His career OPS plus in a Cubs uniform is 88. That's the guy who's making $25 to $30 million per year. You tell me. You could be a Cubs fan, but objectively, come on. Would you pay $180 million to someone who said, I can guarantee you an 80 OPS plus? You'd be like, no way. In fact, you shouldn't be in Major League Baseball. But instead, because Cubs fan base is loyal, they still love him. And you have to demand better. He's 31. Technically, he should still be in his prime. Not having the worst year of his life. Look, Cubs fans, it's time to demand better from your players. It's time to ask for more from this team. 39 and 31 will not get you to the postseason. They may look good now. They may be in first place now. That won't last. Trust me. The only thing that's been great has been the bullpen. Kimbrel, Tepera, Chapin, Winkler, brothers. Thompson, and Nance. They've been great. I have nothing bad to say about them. Hell of a job. It's a shame, though, it's the bullpen. Those are a couple innings again. Not the starting rotation, and definitely not some of the hitting. The Cubs have been propelled by Bryant and Rizzo, really, and somewhat Javier Baez, but even his OPS plus is at 105. Everybody else has really done nothing, and they've kind of just found ways to win day in and day out, which is great. Do you think this will last? I'm asking you. Come on, no way. In the next month, it will all come crashing down. So you have to ask yourself, well, what could be done to avoid that? Pitching. More consistent hitting. Are the Cubs in a position to go out and spend lots of money, to go out and trade more and more for 1 year? No. Well, as I said, this month would be important, and it certainly is. I know what conclusion I've drawn about this team already. And if you're still wondering or questioning, I encourage you to really look at this team's numbers. Look at the players. Because it really isn't that hard of a decision. You may think it is due to sentimental value, but if we're talking about logic, if we're talking about real production, the decision to me is pretty easy. And you may not like it, but what are you going to do? This team cannot be stuck for years to come. And by trading at the deadline, by Jed Hoyer coming out and saying, oh, we're going to be buyers, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it for one more year? I don't think so. They might be winning today, but by the end of the season, they'll be a 500 team. And when you look back on the Cubs for this year, you won't say, oh, hey, they made a trade, great. You'll say, well, they didn't take advantage of that trade deadline. Now they have an aging roster. Now they have guys who are going to walk away. They got no capital back for them, and they're going to be in ruins. It's really unfortunate to see how this is playing out for the Cubs. It'd be nice if there was a better way. This roster just isn't good enough. It's just a fact. It's not a good enough roster. I mean, compare them to a real contender like the White Sox. Who would you rather have in your rotation? Carlos Rodon, Lance Lynn, Dallas Keuchel, Giolito, or Kyle Hendricks, Zach Davies, Jake Arrieta, Trevor Williams? Come on. Do the apples to apples comparison and tell me what you see. This is so apparent, and it's too easy to spot with my own eyes, and it's time that everybody else see it too. This rotation is equipped for nothing. It's actually equipped for a rebuild. Believe it or not, it is. They will not go anywhere with this starting pitching. And if you think otherwise, if you actually believe this is going to be a good team still, or they're going to go somewhere, I really encourage you to look closely at the numbers. I see nothing. I don't see anything promising for this team. I see good hitting from some people. I see a great bullpen, no question. I see atrocious starting pitching, some of the worst in baseball. That has to change quick, like in a week or two. Or else this whole thing is a sham, and it's time to stop wasting time and wasting resources with this team. Do your own research and understand what they're really all about. Kris Bryant's done great, and I was wrong about him. I'll admit it. I called him a bust last year. Well, not a bust this year. I was wrong. Rizzo has performed up to his standards. He hasn't exceeded expectations. He's met them. Great. Javier Baez is about average. Fine. Patrick Wisdom. Big, huge surprise. Same with Alcantara. That's great. What about everybody else? Ian Happ has been a disappointment. Jason Hayward's been a disappointment. Eric Sogard can't hit anymore. That experiment's over. Their lineup, plain and simple, is not as potent as a real contender, like the White Sox. That doesn't mean I'm a Sox fan. I grew up a Cubs fan, to let you know. Now I'm right down the middle. This is objective. We're looking at numbers and making an apples-to-apples comparison. That's it. I see what I see. You should see what you see when you look and measure what's been happening. And at this point, I hope it's apparent, I hope it's obvious to Cubs fans. To some, it still may not be. Unless in 2 weeks, realistically, even earlier, your starting pitching improves, this is not a contender, it's a pretender. Acknowledge it. Understand it. Earlier you do, the better off you'll be. More to come. You're on Sports Talk Chicago. My interview with Dan Wiederer comes up next. Stay tuned.